How are you doing? This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, the founder of the highest paid part-time job in the world options trading course. And what we're going to go into is options fundamentals for option traders part 2. If you have not seen part 1, we'll link that in the description. We may link it somewhere in this video, but I really encourage you to do part 1 before we do part 2, because we're kind of building up fundamentally and we want to make sure that you're not missing anything in your education. And if we start talking about specific things that you haven't not been exposed to something, and then therefore you may not be able to pick up or understand what we're talking about. So we really want to encourage you to go through part 1 first and then come over here to part 2. And so what we're going to talk about in part 2 is we're going to build up on some of the fundamental principles that we talked about in part 1 to put you in a position to be a very successful options trader and to be able to finally get what you want to get out of the market, right? So let's go ahead and get into it. The goal of this video is to help you obtain a solid fundamental understanding of the options market, to help you develop a basic understanding of intrinsic and extrinsic value of options, to show you why intrinsic and extrinsic value of options are important to options traders, and then also help you create a solid foundation that will help you as an options trader. So these are going to be the goals of the video, what we are aiming for. So when you walk away from this video, you have these understandings and you're able to apply them to your trading. Therefore, you can get what you desire to get out of the market. Now, the question is, why do so many options traders struggle finding success in the options market? So this is going to be a really big question because so many people come into this market. There's a lot of information on YouTube. There's so many videos. There's so many different ways to approach this. But however, so many traders struggle finding success in the options market. And one of the reasons is because for many of them, their contracts are expiring with less value than what they paid to buy the contract. So many of them are buying contracts and either they're exiting or they're expiring at less than what they paid. So then they're always in the red. They're never profitable. And over time, they just get forced out of the market. So what are we trying to do to avoid that? We're trying to make sure that you as an options trader have a really good understanding of how to avoid this by understanding how to put yourself in the best position to be successful. Now, here's an example of the scenario that we're talking about. So a share price of a company XYZ is going to be $100. Trader buys an options call contract at a strike price of $150 to expire in 7 days. Share price of company XYZ moves up $15 in 7 days and stops at $115 on the 7th day. The options call contract expires worthless because it's out of the money, which is what OTM means, by the end of the 7-day expiration date. Now, here's a better example. So we're going to just kind of give you this example with just the bullet points. So here's the call option walkthrough. Company XYZ has a share price of 100. So they have a call. They get a 150 strike with a 7-day expiration. The share price of XYZ moves $15 over the 7 days. So it stops at 115. They have a call for 150 strike with a 7-day expiration that expires out of the money, less than the value paid to buy the contract. Why? Because if the share price stops at 115, but they have a call at 150 and it expires after the 7 days, they're so far out of the money that their contract has lost value from the time in which they bought it into the time in which it expired. And this happens to a lot of options traders. And over time, they just get forced out of the market because they lose all their capital. Now, here's another example. Share price of company XYZ is $100. Trader buys an option put contract at a strike price of $80 to expire in 7 days. Share price of company XYZ moves down $5 in 7 days and stops at $95 at the 7th day. The option put contract expires worthless because it's out of the money by the end of the 7-day expiration date. Now let's give you the bullet point example again. Put option walkthrough. Company XYZ has a share price of 100. Put $80 strike, 7-day expiration. Share price of XYZ moves down $5 over the 7 days, so it stops at $95. You are the trader, has a put contract, $80 strike, 7-day expiration, expires out of the money, less than the value paid to buy the contract. Why? Share price is 95, you have a put at 80 and it expires. Therefore, your contract is worth less than the value paid to buy the contract. And in real life, that contract will expire right at 4 o'clock on that Friday, worth $0. Now, why does this happen? This happens to a lot of options traders. And it's one of the reasons why they get forced out of the market. One of the reasons why people tell you that options is gambling, and really is a lack of fundamental understanding of the actual market that they're involved in. And many of us are involved in scenarios where we lack a fundamental understanding. We want to get what we want to get out of the market, but we don't really understand the fundamentals of the market, right? We may understand the technicals, but not the fundamentals. And that's really what we endeavor to make sure you have, because we know that that can allow you to get the success that you desire. First reason is going to be budget, right? Second reason, lack of understanding of theta. Theta is a Greek. It affects the actual options contract pricing. It affects the market. And in my opinion, it's probably the most important Greek. 3, lack of understanding of intrinsic and extrinsic value. So we're going to cover all these things, and we're going to help you get a better understanding so you don't end up in a negative situation as an options trader. Let's get into budget. So what we're looking at is an options chain of Apple, April 16th expiration. So at the time of this particular video, there's going to be about 5 days to expiration from April 16th. So you would take April 16th and just roll it back 5 days, right? So there's 5 days remaining to expiration for these Apple April 16th call contracts. What we're looking at in this visual is what we would call in the money and out of the money. So the shaded gray, or maybe the shaded blue portion of this particular options chain is everything that's in the money. The thing that's all the part that is in white is everything that's out of the money. Now, I want you to observe, right, the numbers that are immediately to the left of the green numbers. So if we're looking at 133, we're going to see 1.75. We're going to see 0.91. We're going to see 0.92, and then we're going to see plus 0.92. I want you to look at the 0.92 column of numbers that is to the left of the plus 0.92 that's in green. Looking at those numbers as we're getting farther and farther out of the money, those numbers are becoming smaller and smaller, because as we get farther and farther out of the money, the premiums on the contracts become less and less expensive. So the 133 is 147. The 135 is 1.02. The 136 is 0.70. The 137.50 is 0.47. Let me show you a better example. Now we're even farther out of the money. So when we get to the 143, we're at 0.06. The 144 is at 0.05. The numbers continue to get smaller and smaller. Well, why is this happening? Because as we get farther and farther out of the money, the premiums for the contracts become less and less expensive. Many people are persuaded to buy these contracts. And let me go back to the main screen. They're persuaded to buy these contracts because in their mind, well, it's less expensive. Therefore, I can afford to be in on this particular play at a budget that I can afford. However, the problem is that the probability of Apple hitting and exceeding those particular strike prices to where those strike prices expire in the money in a 5-day period, the probability can be very low unless something remarkable happens in the market. So let's say Apple says, hey, on Monday, we're going to launch the Apple Card in a week. Okay, well, then Apple probably may shoot up to $500 in 5 days. However, without something really miraculous happening in the market, what is the probability that Apple is at 140 in 5 days? Can it happen? Yes. But what is the probability? However, for many people, because that is the 140 is a 23 cents contract, and that's option jargon. And you can learn more about that if you take my course. It's a 23-cent contract. We may believe that, well, you know what? I can afford that contract. Well, I may not be able to afford the 208 at the 132, right? I'm sorry, the 208 at the 132.50. Therefore, you can spend money buying those contracts, but the probability can be a lot lower. And if you're a novice trader and you don't really have experience in the market, these are how most novice traders, right, leave the market without any success. Because they really don't have a really good understanding of the market. They're persuaded to buy really, really inexpensive contracts at the way out of the money. They don't have any success. They run through all their capital and then they're out of the market. OK, so options are not gambling if you understand the actual fundamentals of the market. OK, now let's go into the next reason. Theta decay. As contracts, right, get closer to expiration and it's out of the money, it will lose premium value. Theta decay to me is one of the most important Greeks in the options market. And we understand is that the expiration date is a hard date. It's like expiration on a piece of food in the supermarket. when you get that piece of food in the supermarket, when it expires on that date, either they got to sell it or throw it away. If the health department or, the code enforcement finds that they're selling food that has expired, they can get into a lot of trouble. So that expiration date becomes a very hard date. You can't get around it. So just like in the grocery store, as you get closer to expiration date and the particular product has not sold, what do? They start cutting the price to try to move it. Your options contracts, a lot of times they behave in a similar fashion. If you're out of the money and you get closer to the expiration date, what happens to your premiums? They start to drop really rapidly. And as you get closer and closer, the drop becomes more and more rapid. And so you got to understand is that when you're buying way, way, way out of the money and you're getting close to your expiration date, you're going to see a massive decline in your premiums. And this is why many people, end up leaving that contract or having the contract expire zero because they really don't understand these fundamental principles of the market. Next thing we're going to talk about is intrinsic value. So what is intrinsic value? As a strike price is lower than the price of the underlying asset, that's intrinsic value from the call side. On the put side, strike price is higher than price of the underlying asset. Okay, so these are the fundamentals of why you would want to buy a call or a put. However, many people are operating without the fundamental understanding. Let's give you an example. Company XYZ has a share price of $100. Call, $90 strike, 7 days expiration. So what do we have? We have intrinsic value because we got a $90 strike with 7 days to expire. The goal is to have the contract contain intrinsic value before expiration. Company XYZ has a share price of $100. We get a put with a $120 strike with 7 days to expire, right? The goal is to have the contract contain intrinsic value before expiration. This is very, very important. You really want to understand this. Now let's go to extrinsic value, which means that there is time or expiration left on the contract. So let's give some examples. Company XYZ has a share price of $100. So we get a call for a $90 strike with 120 days of expiration. The goal is to have the contract contain extrinsic value before expiration. Then we go company XYZ has a share price of 100. So we get a put with a 120 strike with 120 days left of expiration. The goal is to have the contract contain extrinsic value before expiration. Okay, so I want everybody to understand those examples. Extrinsic value means that we have a lot of time before expiration. So what you want to do in best case scenario as an options trader is you want to sell your contracts with intrinsic and extrinsic value. What does it mean? We're in the money and we have days left to expire. So company XYZ has a share price of $100. We have a call contract that has a $90 strike with 90 days left to expire. Company XYZ has a share price of $100. What would we like to do? We got a put with a 120 strike with a 90 days left to expire. So these are really good contracts. Why? We're in the money and we still got a lot of expiration left. So we have intrinsic and extrinsic value on the particular contract. Okay. So this is how we put ourselves in the best position to be successful is we try to create these kind of scenarios as traders. Okay. And so this is really, really important that you understand this. Buying contracts way out of the money, it can work, but what is the probability? Especially as a novice trader. And so what I want to really explain to a lot of novice traders are people that have not been able to figure out how to create any kind of sustainable success, right? Put yourself in the best position to be successful. And if you want to really learn more how to do that, make sure you reach out to somebody that can kind of teach you how to put yourself in the best position to be successful as an options trader. Now, something I want to really reiterate to you. Theta Decay is an 800-pound gorilla. You can't get around it. The expiration date of the contract is the expiration date of the contract. You cannot get around that. OK, and so if you're disregarding that, right, and you're trying to get cheap contracts. So if you're really been persuaded to get inexpensive contracts and on top of that, you're disregarding your expiration date, right? You're going to put yourself in a position that it's going to make it very difficult for you to be successful as an options trader, especially with any kind of sustained success, right? So what we want to do is we want to hope that you got value out of this class. Our goal is to help you become a successful options trader by making sure that you understand the fundamentals and give you something to build off of as you start to grow and become more and more experienced in the market. We want you to look out for class 3. If you want to learn more about the highest paid part-time job in the world options training program, hit the link in the description or reach out to me. but this is going to be for serious people that want to get results in the market. Like, share, subscribe. This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, and I'll talk to you later.